Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Gregory. The developing country I chose was Afghanistan. I chose it because I was there for 7 months in 2011, going into 2012. That, along with the fact it was the first on the list, seemed almost as if it was meant to be. My personal experiences while in Afghanistan coincide with some of the topics we discussed in class, namely feminism and the attacks on the Twin Towers on September 11th. The reason I was there was indirectly because of the events of September 11th. While there, I was on multiple patrols where I was able to meet people, shake hands, and even have meals. I experienced firsthand the way people live in third world developing countries. Some of the experiences while there were bittersweet. I was part of a PSD platoon, which is personal security detail. While there, one of our missions was to stay in post in a city called Zaranj in order to guard one of the only schools in the country that educate women. It wasn't until the 1700s when Afghanistan became an official or single country. Throughout history, it has been a gateway between Europe and Asia, and Britain tried to take it over as a strategic stronghold in order to help its ally India from Russia, which started a series of wars that Britain eventually lost in 1921. After a few years of infighting, the United States finally recognized Afghanistan as a country in 1934. 20 years later, a pro-Soviet general named Mohammad Daoud Khan started introducing social reforms like allowing women into more social roles, including universities and working. Afghanistan has a very long history of warfare, beginning long before the country was known as Afghanistan. Famous kings like Darius of Persia in 500 BC to Alexander the Great around 300 BC have entered Afghanistan as conquerors. Even Genghis Khan had a go in the region during the 13th century. Afghanistan has been conquered over and over again, but the man who is considered the greatest of all the Afghan conquerors was Mahmud of Ghazni, and in the 11th century conquered an empire from Iran to India. Until Britain in the late 1800s into the 1900s, Afghanistan had no major conflicts. Warlords and small skirmishes between tribes were the extent of their wars until the Russians invaded later in the 1900s. Although they eventually went to war in 1979, Afghanistan and Russia were close allies during the mid-1900s and the Cold War. Afghanistan became a full-fledged communist country and remained close with Russia for the next 20 to 30 years. During this time, the country modernized immensely, including a new constitution in 1975 promoting women's rights. Later that decade, in 1978, Mohammad Daoud Khan is assassinated and the country slowly regresses into the Afghanistan we all currently know and love. Other than the time between the 1950s and roughly 1990 or so, Afghanistan has not really experienced imperialism, decolonization, nor much globalization. First, because of Britain's failed attempt at imperialism in the late 1800s and Russia's failed attempt in 1979, Afghanistan has never had to decolonize. Secondly, globalization has had minor effects, but due to the assassination of Khan and the subsequent wars with Russia, United States, and eventually being taken over by the Taliban, Afghanistan's run at becoming a modern country was put to an end. Right now, Afghanistan is primarily a third world country. The majority of the country is impoverished, and the developed cities are a far cry from the major cities we're used to seeing in the United States and around the world. Right now, war-torn Afghanistan is basically a battleground. It's a haven for terrorists, the Taliban, and other groups like ISIS. It's going to be a long time before it gets any better. I actually think it's going to get worse before it gets better.